Have you ever wondered, if one day no one was around to lend a hand, would you still be able to rise from that familiar chair on your own? And when your grandchild comes running, tugging your sleeve, "Grandpa, come play with me on the floor," would you say yes, or simply smile and gently shake your head? It may sound simple, but those tiny moments are, in truth, powerful signs. They show that your body is doing better than you think. And here's something quietly extraordinary. There are just 8 ordinary things. If you can still do them, you may live even longer than someone younger than you today. If these words reflect even a glimpse of your own story, I invite you to subscribe so we can meet again in the next video crafted to heal and uplift. And if you're here with me now, I'd love to see your voice in the comments below. I can still do that. Or simply, I'm returning to myself. Now, just sit quietly. Take a deep, slow breath. We'll begin with something that may seem old and familiar, but might just change the rest of your life. There was a morning. You woke up earlier than usual. Not because of an alarm, but because of the birds outside your window, as if time itself was calling you back to something long forgotten. You sat up slowly, your hand brushing across the blanket you've used for so many years. And then your gaze landed on your knees, the very ones that once held your firstborn, that once chased after your grandchild through the park. The old wooden chair by the window is still there, the one where you used to read in the late afternoons, or quietly knit as autumn drifted in. Have you ever rested your hand on its armrest and thought, all these years I've stood up from this chair without ever needing help from anyone? Moments like that, they seem small, but they awaken something ancient, like the feeling of being 40 or 50 again. When you carried a sack of rice home from the market without breaking a sweat. When you caught your grandchild at the bottom of the slide without even thinking about your knees. And sometimes in the stillness of an afternoon, you reach into the closet for that old sweater. Your hand may tremble, just slightly, but it's still steady enough to pull the zipper up to your neck. No one sees it, no applause. But inside, there's a quiet sense of certainty. You know, deep down, my body, though it's changed, is still holding on to something worth being proud of. In a little cafe, Mr. James, 78 years old, once shared with me, "I don't climb mountains anymore like I did in my youth, but every morning I walk to the post office just to send a handwritten letter to an old friend. I still step outside on my own. I still breathe with rhythm, and that makes me feel like I'm still me." That one sentence has stayed with me ever since, because it wasn't about age, it was about essence. That part of us we often forget is still there. The part that still wants to live, still wants to move, still knows how to love. And if you can still recall a moment like that, then let me say this gently. You haven't lost yourself at all, but over time, it's not just youth that slips away. Time quietly takes the smallest things, the things we once believed would always be there. No one wakes up one morning and says, "Today I will lose my balance," or "Today it will be harder to bend down and pick up my slippers." It happens, whereas gradually, like the sound of church bells fading into the fog, like the warmth left behind on the chair beside you after the one you loved is no longer there. Once, Mrs. Helen, 76 years old, shared something with me, her voice barely louder than a whisper to herself. "I don't know when I started holding the handrail going up the stairs. At first it was just a habit, but one day I realized I truly needed it." That's not weakness. That's a quiet shift, a transition that comes without warning. And more than that, we learn to live with it without even noticing. Do you remember when you could walk into the kitchen and wash a basket of vegetables without your back aching? When you knelt to lay out the mat, mop the floor, play with your grandchild without needing a cushion for your knees? Now just tying your shoes calls for a deep breath first. We don't choose to give up. We simply begin to avoid. Avoid bending down. Avoid rushing. Avoid sitting on the floor. And one day, we begin avoiding ourselves. Our bodies still remember how to live, but our minds begin to quietly excuse the very things that once made us feel alive. Sometimes the loss isn't because something was taken from us, but because we stopped holding on. And perhaps the saddest part isn't that the body can no longer do it. It's that we no longer want to try. If you've ever sat on your front porch in the late afternoon and watched others walk by, a little faster than you can now, if your chest tightened a little because you could no longer lift your grandchild into your arms the way you used to, please don't blame yourself. Because the most precious thing is this: you still feel the change. To feel it is the first step toward awakening, and any loss that can be named no longer has the power to stay invisible. Have you ever whispered to yourself, "It's nothing, just a bit of soreness"? Maybe it's the weather. "I'm fine, just need a moment to rest." We say things like that, not to fool anyone, but to comfort our own hearts. Because somewhere deep inside, there's still a part of us that doesn't want to admit we're growing weaker. Mr. Walter, a friend I once met at the town library, told me, "The first day I couldn't cross the street as quickly as before, I didn't feel sad. I just pretended not to notice." That response, it's familiar, isn't it? We tend to avoid change, as if by not looking at it, it might disappear. You still go out for walks, but now you choose the flatter paths. You still cook standing up, but after a few minutes, you sit on a chair. You still play with your grandchild, but now it's your daughter-in-law who lifts the baby in and out of the car. And every time you tell yourself, it's just more convenient this way. But the body doesn't lie. It speaks in whispers, small signals but clear ones. Sometimes it's a shorter breath than usual. Sometimes it's that quiet unease when stepping down a curb, or the hesitation each time you try to rise from a sunken sofa. We don't want others to worry, and we certainly don't want to admit it to ourselves, because we still have pride. We still want to feel in control of our lives. And so, we resist the truth, not with denial, but with silence. Yet even in that silence, questions begin to knock gently on our shoulder. Am I really getting old? If no one's there to help me up one day, will I still be able to? Am I still the one in charge of this body? No one is asking you to answer right away. But if you've ever spent a night lying awake, hesitating to wake your child just to ask for something within reach, then maybe the truth has already arrived. Not with fear, but with quiet kindness. And that is not weakness. It's the very first step toward becoming strong again. One chilly morning, when the dew still clung to the windowsill and sunlight hadn't yet broken through the aging trees outside, you sat on your familiar wooden chair, the one that's been with you for decades, your back gently rested, hands softly placed on your knees. Everything felt like any other day. Except for one thing. That morning there was no one around. No children, no grandchildren, no helper nearby. And then you stood up. You didn't grip the armrest. You didn't press your hands to your thighs. There was nothing supporting you from behind. It was just a simple movement. But the moment your legs lifted the weight of your whole body, something returned. A feeling of steadiness, of independence, of being fully alive. Like a cool breeze clearing the fog in your mind. I can still do this. No one saw it, no applause, just you and your body, both quietly knowing that this was no small thing. Mr. Thomas, 81 years old, who lived alone after his wife passed, once told me, "That day I stood up from the floor without holding on to anything. I hadn't done that in 3 years, so I sat back down and tried again. The second time I did it even better, and in that moment I realized I wasn't getting old. I had just been forgotten." We don't need to climb mountains. We don't need to run marathons. We don't need to prove anything to anyone. Sometimes all it takes is one kind act toward ourselves, and just enough awareness to notice it. Maybe it's the first time you walked a little faster than usual, the first time you opened a jar without calling for help, the first time you carried the grocery bag in from the car without stopping midway to rest. Moments like these, they are not small because they reach the deepest part of your being, the part that once was strong and is still very much alive within you. When we face even the simplest action with our full attention and presence, it becomes a sacred symbol of something we thought we had lost. And then everything begins to shift, quietly from within, more powerful than any words of encouragement. From that moment, when you stood up without anyone's help, nothing outside of you had changed, but something within you quietly shattered and just as quietly came back together. It was no longer about standing up quickly, only to sit back down again. It became something else, a moment of being fully present with your own body. You began to notice your legs. You tried balancing on one foot while waiting for the water to boil for tea. You placed your hands on the kitchen counter and rose onto your toes, just like in childhood play. No one told you to do it, no video tutorial, no instructor. It just happened. You began to become a friend to your body once more. Mrs. Margaret, 74 years old, shared something quietly beautiful with me. Each morning, I sit on my bed, touch my knees, my shoulders, my cheeks, and I say softly, "Thank you for coming this far with me. Let's keep going, even slowly." That wasn't exercise, that was a ritual, a quiet ritual of rebirth. You started bending down more often, not to pick something up, but to reconnect with the ground beneath you. You began sitting on the floor, not for long, just a minute, but long enough to challenge your trust in yourself again. You carried the groceries inside, not because no one offered to help, but because you wanted to keep the feeling that you could help yourself. Tiny steps, but unmistakable ones. No applause, but you could feel life returning to you through your own 2 feet. This kind of recovery makes no loud sound. It happens quietly, in the most ordinary gestures. Walking just a little faster than you did yesterday. Climbing the stairs without needing to pause. Sitting down without worrying who might help you up. You are no longer someone growing old. You are someone choosing to keep living with awareness. Yes, weakness may have visited, but it no longer rules the house, because now standing in its place is a version of you who knows what you need, what you're capable of, and how you want to live from this day forward. Have you ever opened your eyes one morning and realized you didn't need an alarm clock? Not because of insomnia, but because your body had rested enough and wanted to live one more day. Mrs. Evelyn, 79 years old, living with her young granddaughter, once told me, "There was a time when I'd wake up and feel nothing at all. No excitement, no reason. But lately, I wake before my granddaughter does. I brush my hair, open the window, and put the kettle on. No one asked me to, but I feel like I'm returning to myself." Returning doesn't mean becoming young again. It means coming home to who you are, with new eyes wide awake. You begin to see beauty again in the smallest of things. A step taken without stumbling. Climbing a flight of stairs without pausing halfway. Preparing your own meal, serving it, cleaning up, without anyone needing to step in. You no longer ask anything of age 70 or 80. And perhaps because of that, life begins to give you more. A memory that still recalls your 4th grade grandchild's name. A breath steady and full enough to sing a line from your favorite song. Hands strong enough to fold a sun-dried shirt, still carrying the scent of wind. This isn't a miracle. It is life, seen through the lens of gratitude. Your body may not be what it once was, but your eyes now carry stillness. No longer chasing lost time, only honoring what remains. You begin to live more slowly, but more deeply, and each morning becomes more than a beginning. It becomes a rare and precious chance to do something again, no matter how small. Perhaps it's rereading a book from long ago, or trying to walk 5 minutes faster than last week, or simply telling your child, "I can still do this, let me try." That old light, the one from your strongest years, has returned, not as bright, but warmer, softer, and steadier than ever before. And that is the truest sign that you are living, not merely existing. There are people who never try to teach anyone anything, and yet, the moment they enter a room, everything grows still. Not because they're commanding, not because they're successful or well-known, but because they live. fully. Mr. Andrew, 83 years old, lives in a small house by the park. Every morning, like clockwork at 6 a.m., he brings a chair out to his porch, sits upright, sips his tea, then walks around the lake. No one asks him to, no one reminds him, but the neighborhood children slowly began waking up with him. The woman next door started doing gentle stretches, inspired by his quiet routine, and his son, always busy with work, began visiting more often. Not because Mr. Andrew gave advice, not because he lectured, but because his presence was the story. Have you ever noticed how each small action you take is quietly being watched by someone? The way you carry your own groceries, the way you wash dishes slowly, without complaint, the way you rise from a chair, legs steady and strong. These things don't need words, and yet they touch the hearts of others effortlessly. We've lived long enough to know that advice often means less than a single look of trust, that lectures often fade next to the quiet strength of a steady step. You don't have to say, live well, be kind. You just have to live that way, and the young will see it, and they'll understand. Maybe it's a grandchild watching silently as you balance on one foot each night and trying to do the same. Maybe it's a daughter seeing her mother still smile softly even as her hands tremble, and finding peace in that. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to prove anything, because you, through your quiet patience and presence, have become a warm light, one that gently lights the path for those around you. And that is the most beautiful gift someone who has walked through the years can ever leave behind. Not flashy, not loud, just simple and fully present. And now, if you're still here, still listening softly to each word, then perhaps a part of your body or your soul has already begun to awaken, not because of a loud call, not because of some miracle, but because of a quiet reminder that you still can, that you are still living more fully than you may have realized. Maybe you haven't done all 8 things, but if there is just one small shift in awareness, one step taken with more steadiness than yesterday, isn't that already a kind of rebirth? We're not asking the body to return to its 20s. We're simply hoping for something beautifully simple, that each day when we open our eyes, we can still do one thing, just one, on our own. And if there's anything among the 8 signs we've shared that you're still able to do, please leave a comment below. Not to boast, not to compare, but simply to say, I can still do this. So others, your peers, your quiet companions in this journey, can see and feel, we are still here. We still matter. There is still life breathing in every small movement we make. And if there's something inside you you'd like to awaken again, a lost ability, a small act you stopped doing because you thought you couldn't anymore, write it down, because sometimes writing it out is the first quiet promise we make to ourselves. This channel isn't here to teach or instruct. It's a space to remember, to revive, and to move forward together. If you felt seen, if you felt heard, please share this video with someone you love. Help them understand more deeply what it means to be a parent, a grandparent, a life still unfolding. Because living long on its own is not enough. Living beautifully is the true legacy. We call you elders of depth, not because of age alone, but because you have walked through life with presence, with quiet courage, and with a heart that still knows how to love. A life message, dear beloved elders. Growing old is not the end of the road. It is a quiet season for returning to yourself. No more rushing, no more proving, just the gentle grace of feeling warmth in the early morning, of standing on your own 2 feet, of remembering the name of someone you love. That alone means you are still living, and living beautifully. Every slow and steady step, every small movement you make is a quiet testament to this truth. Age is not measured by the years behind you, but by the life still breathing in your gaze. So please do not feel ashamed when you need to rest. Do not feel discouraged when your body softens or slows. And never forget, as long as you still believe in your ability to heal, then each new day is another beginning. We call you elders of depth Because in every glance, in every wrinkle, in every story you carry, lies a spiritual legacy that the generations to come must learn to listen to.